started here. We're gonna get started with some quick updates from the Georgia Geospatial Board. My name's Tyler Nuttall. I am the Georgia Geospatial Vice President on the board, and here today, thank you for joining us for our Lunch and Learn. And today's Lunch and Learn is going to be about regional planning systems enabled by ArcGIS with Beau Ryck. But quickly, I just want to talk about if you're new to GGA. We were formerly a Georgia Jurist chapter and broke away some years ago to become our own GIS user group, but we're a network made up of GIS professionals, and we provide networking opportunities, learning resources, and education resources to develop the next generation of geospatial experts. And we have lots of events going on this summer and lots of events coming up in the fall too. But I just want to quickly highlight some of our events this summer. May 28th, which I believe is next Wednesday, we're going to have the Atlanta chapter happy hour, and that's going to be at Scofflaws at the Works. I don't know if Christian is online or not to mention anything about it. I don't think he is. And then after that, we're going to have on June 5th our first Northwest Georgia subchapter kickoff. And we're really excited for that, as that's the first time that chapter is going to meet. And if you're new to GGA, traditionally we've had a couple of chapters in various regions, but we're really starting to become more focused in our local communities. So trying to help grow the GIS community within these more regionalized areas. So Northwest chapter kickoff is going to be up in Rome, Georgia. So up there in that northwest corner of Georgia, and they're going to be talking about Survey 123 and ArcGIS Online. That's going to be an in-person event, and I believe lunch will be provided at that event. And then I'll hand it over to Brody to talk about the Friday, June 6th drone flight day.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Brody. I'm the drone chair for the Georgia Geospatial Association. So Friday, June 6th, we'll be having a drone flight day. We do quarterly meetups for the drone group. This one will be in person, taking place at the city of Marietta. We'll be meeting in a conference room there, having lunch and networking. And along with our partners, Wingtra and Duncan Parnell, we'll be completing mission mapping flights over Marietta Square to show off a couple different airframes, show off the Wingtra, show off a FreeFly Astro X, and show off a DJI Matrice. So that'll be real good. That'll be Friday, June 6th, and I look forward to seeing some of you guys there.
Awesome. Thanks, Brody. And then on Tuesday, June 17th, Northeast Georgia subchapter, which is in Athens, will be having their meeting, and I'll let Philip talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Howard. Hey, everybody. My name is Philip. I'm the Northeast Georgia chapter president. So we'll be having our quarterly meeting on June 17th, and it'll be at 11 a.m. And we always have them at the Linden House, and we have them quarterly. So for this one, we'll have a lunch, and then the main speakers will be from the UGA library, and they'll be talking about the UGA Map and Government Library Aerial Photography Program, and some other resources that they have. So if you're interested in signing up, we have a Springly link on the website.
Awesome. And if you're not local to Athens, or if that's a hard place for you to get to, we do have plans to try to cast this one virtually as well. So if you can't make it, this topic I think is important for everybody in the state to be aware of, as there's this amazing imagery library that exists for the entire state of Georgia that you can tap into. And then beyond these events, looking forward to our conference in Jekyll Island on September 15th through 17th. If you haven't registered yet, please go over to our website and go to our conference page to register. I know a lot of folks are waiting for their next fiscal year in July to hit before they register. But if you can register today, please go ahead and do so. We're also looking for people to sign up to present themselves. But at the conference, we're going to have Susan Miller as a keynote, our GIO. So really excited to have her there. And then we're also going to have a keynote talk from Joe Fraley, who is a lead solution engineer at Esri on the national government team. And there's only like a handful of those at Esri, and that means that she is the person for AI at Esri. So she's going to be talking about GIS and AI at this conference as part of her keynote. So we're really excited for the conference. Beyond the keynote, Joe's planning to do additional AI sessions at the conference. And then, like I said, please sign up, and we also do need speakers at the conference as well. So there's a link on our website to register as a speaker, and you do get a discounted registration rate for that. And then just want to throw this up here. If you're not a member today, please consider becoming a member. That's how we fund things like the conferences, these events, this lunch and learn, all this stuff. So with all that, is there any other board members on the call today that wanted to mention anything? Got a good showing today.
I did want to throw out registration and everything for the drone day will be coming out this week. So it's not live quite yet, but keep an eye out on our social media, GGA, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and that'll be out soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Brody. John Paul, were there any updates on the education side that you want to share today? Sorry to pick
Hey,
up
thank you,
spot.
Tyler. Yeah, we just have our virtual map competition for university students. The final deadline for that is this Friday. So if you know any university students, the link for the submission portal is on the GGA education page. You can also email education@gageospatial.org if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, John Paul. All right, now with all the updates, I want to hand it over to Beau Ryck. Beau, if you're still there.
I am.
Awesome.
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
I can hear you. I can't see you yet, but it could just be a lag on my side. I'm gonna stop presenting and let you present.
Sounds good. Let me get my screen shared. Window, screen 2. There we go.
All right. I'm seeing your screen now, Beau.
Not sure.
And I'm seeing you.
All right. Cool. Awesome. Well, hey everyone. Thank you to Tyler for inviting me to join you all today, and thanks to you all for having me. Apologies, as I'm just getting over a little bit of a upper respiratory infection, so I might have to clear my throat every now and then. I sent Tyler an abstract for this presentation, but that was quite a while ago now, so I am hoping I do everyone justice here as I kind of share my perspective on how regional planning agencies are using ArcGIS to enable their work. I'm particularly excited to be presenting to you all on this topic because, as I understand it, there are a number of folks in the room that are maybe from various Georgia regional planning commissions, and I am definitely interested to learn more about how your work compares to the work we're doing with other agencies. So my name is Beau Ryck. I'm a senior consultant in Esri's professional services division, and what that means is I actually work with a wide variety of public and private sector customers. My personal interest is in helping regional planning agencies better use our technology to help develop their communities. Titles and jargon aside, the truth about me is that I'm just a guy from Pennsylvania. I was born and raised in a tiny little Appalachian town that you've probably never heard of called Towanda. If you have heard of Towanda, drop a comment in the chat as to why. I would be really interested to know. School and work took me kind of all across the country. I've lived in Kentucky, New Hampshire, California. Currently back in Penns Woods, where I live in a little northwestern Philadelphia neighborhood called Mount Airy. I haven't always been a geographer or technologist, though. My first job, if you don't count being a gopher for my dad's power washing or inflatable bounce house businesses, a job, I was an ice cream scoop at the Country Cottage. My worst job was a side gig that I picked up around the same time in high school as a seasonal hire at JCPenney's, where I was folding clothes and straightening clothes racks, and that just was about the most boring thing I could have ever done. So I definitely wanted to go to college and get a better job than that. And before working in Esri Professional Services, I actually helped launch our indoor GIS product line, but I was lucky enough to be able to take my interest in ArcGIS back outdoors after several years of doing that work to do what I always wanted to do, which is to consult on planning and geodesign projects. So I'm glad that Esri's given me that flexibility, because this is, I would say, the best job I've ever had, and I hope to have it forever. If you ask my partner, Lisa, she'll tell you that my work is my passion, which is definitely true, but I also love hiking, especially in the Appalachians. I'm a distance runner, although I'm not fast. I just get a little spiritual connection to the land when I run, and I can't get enough of that. Photography is one of my hobbies. I use a Fujifilm, so if there are any Fuji fans in the room, hit me up and we can chat about equipment. My favorite lens is my 35mm. I also like to read. I just finished Chronic City by John Lethem and recommend it to anyone looking for a little humor or mystery, and open to any book recommendations you might have. And lastly, I am also a writer. I am currently writing something right now called From Memory. No idea what it's going to turn into, but it's fun. I basically sit down and I think about the very first thing that I can remember. And I am slowly recording these memories to share with friends and family. Most of it just makes it into like birthday cards and holiday cards and such. But now you know about as much about me as anyone. So I have to make a few promises. First, I will share what I've learned from other customers like you. I'm not going to pretend like that's a complete picture of the industry or your experience. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm very interested to learn how your situation might differ from what I share. And lastly, any problem you might present to me, I am going to work as hard as I can to solve it. So with that said, let's get into the agenda. 3 simple topics I'm planning to cover today. I'm going to share my perspective on the growing case for regional planning, how ArcGIS can be leveraged as a system to perform the work of regional planning staff, and how we work with customers to sort of support their implementation of regional planning systems. 3 chapters, only 18 slides, plenty of room for discussion. Please chime in. I am not as familiar with the Google Meet interface, so I might have a hard time keeping up with any chats that you drop in. Tyler, I'd just let you know if you do see anything coming through there that's relevant, just feel free to interrupt me. There's plenty of time for discussion.
Sounds good. I'll monitor it.
All right, cool. With that said, then let's get started. And this is a little bit of a controversial starting point, but first, I typically like to clear the air on my presentation with some distinctions that tends to separate the work of regional planners from local planners. This is typically really important for myself in the Esri ecosystem because we have about 3,000 employees, and when you say planning, a lot of those 3,000 employees start to think about their local planning commissions that are updating their comprehensive plans and reviewing permits and approving variances and engaging local residents on these issues. And I like to frequently remind my peers as I'm working with them to support our customers, at least in the regional planning industry, that regional planners are not local planners. They have they need a different set of tools and different type of support than our local planners that are doing community development. That's not to say that there's not work that regional planners do to support local planners. I just like to distinguish between the two. And of course, if I start with that, then I also need to help my peers understand what it is that regional planners actually do so that they can understand how their work needs to be focused on delivering value. So I frequently kind of reinforce a few key points of regional planning focus. First of all, planning for growth. I was just doing some homework on the state of Georgia, and I found out that Georgia surpassed 11 million residents last year, which is about an additional 150,000 new people. And that's a continued sustained elevated growth rate, which of course, puts pressure on infrastructure. So regional planners are often focused on how to secure funding for projects meant to help mitigate the stress of this growth on things like roads and housing and other natural resources. And these issues, of course, and their solutions, naturally, they're cross-jurisdictional boundaries. And so, you can't count on a city or a county being able to manage the totality of these issues. And therefore, there's a dependency on the regional planning commissions to help sort these issues and their solutions out. So this, I think, is where we want to really focus on the unique work of regional planners that help their local planners develop their communities. And I guess I don't want to belabor just how essential this regional planning work is to folks that are probably living it. But I think it is really important to reinforce how important addressing these issues are at a regional level. Because if there's not a coordinated effort to support growth, regions risk shrinking. And a shrinking population is detrimental to a region because as the people go, so go the businesses. And those businesses, of course, are leaving because they're depending on consumers to survive. And with fewer people comes fewer businesses. And with fewer people and fewer businesses, there are, of course, fewer resources to maintain the infrastructure, which ultimately just leads to a sort of cyclical decline and deterioration of infrastructure and community assets. So the bottom line really is that it takes a long time for a place to recover economically from that sort of disarray. And regional planners ultimately assume growth as a sort of mandate to help identify the best patterns of development to support it within their communities so that they don't have to deal with those risks in the long run. I think it's also interesting that this work is kind of has a long history. The importance of the work is sort of reinforced throughout that history, and that includes various federal and state mandates. I know there are sort of different types of regional planning agencies. I work with a lot of MPOs that were sort of mandated to exist by the Federal Highway Act in 1962. But then, of course, there are regional planning commissions that kind of overlap with, and in some cases, reflect the actual jurisdictional boundaries. And in some cases, I'm even working with MPOs and regional planning commissions that literally share the same staff. And so there's quite a bit of overlap, but again, in my homework on the state of Georgia, I noticed that there was some state level legislation that was passed in 1989 called the Georgia Planning Act, which mandates that the regional planning commissions develop regional comprehensive plans, that they use those plans to help coordinate the management of the regionally important resources, and also provide technical assistance and reviews for local planners on particularly impactful regional developments. So I find that the sort of legislation often gives us a really good insight into really specifically what different types of regional planning agencies are doing around the country. It's also maybe worth noting that the areas of interest of MPOs, regional planning commissions, often also overlap with economic development districts, which sort of separately have a mandate to attract and retain businesses, often in coordination with those regional agencies, as well as state departments of community and economic development. So this is kind of the picture of the types of customers that I'm frequently working with and their sort of mandates. But as I mentioned, always interested to see how that kind of varies within the role and the function of your individual regional planning commission. So that's where that's kind of the groundwork for what regional planning looks like and why it looks that way. But one question we frequently ask ourselves internally is, where is regional planning going? And what we're seeing is a movement in the industry towards this notion of smart regions. And what we're hearing, what we're seeing, regional planning agencies pursuing this smart region approach looking like is sort of this single integrated system where local and regional issues are sort of considered and addressed holistically. And this sort of, like, I guess, to put it in ecological terms, a symbiosis should play in a well-functioning region. You probably often already experience these overlaps. I think the idea that a smart region or a region currently isn't smart is a little bit of a disservice to some of the folks that we work with, and the industry at a large. But I think the way we are interpreting it is that some regions that are kind of pursuing this smart region notion is that, yes, the symbiosis or the collaboration between regional and local planning agencies is there, but it could be better. And I think that's what they're really ultimately pursuing. And so we start to look at how they can start to actually deliver this smart region concept. And they're focused on a few key things, which is to make and stand by their decisions that are backed by data and analysis, first and foremost. And then also embrace planning that anticipates and adapts to change, that effectively engages community in the planning process, and at the bottom line also improves operational efficiencies, because we know that there are high costs to doing this work, and we want to be as judicious about our investment of time and resources as possible. So that's kind of a concept that we're paying a lot of attention to in the industry. I'm interested to hear how that might translate to your regional planning commissions, if it's a discussion that you all have, and any perspectives that you might have on it. But what that's driving us towards, that's kind of the, letting our customers lead us. And so where does that lead us? Well, it leads us to sort of a notion that we have a geographic information system that ultimately can be used to develop regional planning systems. And those regional planning systems are what can enable that notion of a smart region. Because when we use ArcGIS to deliver these regional planning systems to that end, we're actually seeing agencies becoming better able to share their data and information more easily, being able to actually reduce the initial costs of data preparation, and improve project performance. So, of course, all of those sort of regionally important developments that you all might be reviewing require good data to be able to assess and make recommendations on. And so with that easily accessible data and standard set of tools for assessment, there's also a sort of virtuous benefit that comes from that, which is the improved performance of those projects, better proposals to begin with, frankly, and then ultimately better technical assistance and better execution throughout the project lifecycle. All of that, of course, then further enables better regulatory compliance. So These are sort of the general benefits that are being realized by planners and stakeholders throughout the planning process when they're leveraging ArcGIS to the best of its abilities. I'm going to stop there and just check in if there's anything in the chat or any questions or inputs or immediate conversations that anybody in the room is interested in putting on the table at the moment. Otherwise, I will jump into some of the, sort of deeper dive value propositions and discuss that a little bit further. Cool. I figured out how to open the chat and I don't see any messages. I think that means that we can go on. All right then. Okay. So where does any good regional planning system project begin? I think fundamentally what we see is that it all starts with good data. And we know that we can't get started without it. Yet every single time we get to work on a plan update or a project review requires a big spend of time and money finding and acquiring data to get started. I see this all the time in RFPs that regional planning agencies are putting out, just getting quotes for data from third-party agencies. And the truth is that a lot of the data actually exists in their member agencies and member communities and their own intellectual properties if they just spent the time to model it and develop it. So one component of a regional planning system, and usually the first component of a regional planning system, is what we call a regional data platform. This is quickly being adopted by a number of our regional planning customers, and they're adopting it because what they're using it as is a sort of destination for all of the other strategic GIS resources that they develop to become sort of the front door for the planning agency. And to start with, they're publishing all of their best available region-wide data sets there to make it easily accessible to all the region's stakeholders so that they can quickly find information when they need to get started on a plan update or a project review or something of that nature. When we deliver this component, we frequently focus on kind of establishing the core data models for the data sets that we're planning to keep up to date to reflect the existing conditions as a starting point. And then we also consider the audience and set up permissions to help share the data with the right folks at the right time. And then lastly, but not least, we consider the update cycle. Who's going to be updating the data, how often, through which applications, and this is really important because, we know that we're working with constraints, so we might have to look for ways to streamline and automate those data production workflows in the long run so that we can kind of maintain a healthy platform for everyone to work from. So that's one component, is just sort of establishing that regional data platform. Then you can imagine we've built a foundation, a set of infrastructure that's hydrated with information. And what do we use that information for? Well, it's the planning process that you all are very familiar with. So we work with agencies to support their research and analysis tools to help them repeatedly perform standard workflows, which often reflect that process that you're familiar, starting with none other than examining your existing conditions. So of course, if you're making making a update to your regional transportation plan or your regional comprehensive plan, or even at a local level, your specific area plan, or something of that nature. You need to understand the context within which you're actually working before you can start to make good decisions about how it's going to change. So we enable that initial existing conditions to be sort of examined at a fundamental level, and that's often the base of what we install to begin with. But then we get into more decision-specific tools. So things like suitability analysis and helping decision makers assess the suitability of land use decisions, both across the region all at once. So, example query might be, find me all of the parcels across the region that might be, that we might apply this particular policy to, or might meet this certain set of criteria. Vacant land over a half acre, commercial zone, and within a 15-minute walk of a bus stop or something of that nature. And then also on the flip side of that, individual suitability analysis. I'm a stakeholder that's interested, can this happen here? This here has a certain set of constraints that we can kind of impose on the query. And so now we are helping the stakeholder. Maybe it's a member of the public actually looking to determine if they can put a certain, I don't know, I live in a rural area, so maybe I want to put a chicken coop in my backyard. Does the local community have any kind of restrictions on certain types of properties? And so just enabling the assessment of suitability at a parcel level. Kind of two flip sides of the coin, and often we're probably somewhere in between. But of course, those kinds of assessments can be performed using GIS because we have the ability to hydrate the decision-making unit with all of the attributes or variables that we might be assessing for. Then, of course, we are hoping to weigh these decisions. So we are also building a lot of scenario-based evaluation tools. These tools are leveraging both 2D and 3D data to help understand potential outcomes of development. And then lastly, we're seeing increasing interest in developing these sort of project tracking or progress tracking tools that kind of help continue to align development throughout a plan period, as well as keep information up to date, even outside of a plan update cycle. So it's kind of giving, again, a destination for that authoritative information to additional stakeholders. So you're creating additional value in that authoritative information. And then, of course, I don't know about you all, but and I know this is probably not true of everyone, but I think a lot of planners believe that the beauty of planning is in its collaborative nature. We're frequently working with customers to enable more and better collaboration. So I think probably a lot of you all, if you're familiar with GIS and ArcGIS, you're probably familiar with the ability to leverage open data. But we're continuously adding capabilities to that component of the platform, like map-based commentary and support to be able to support your community kind of conversations about proposed developments. We're also continuously integrating with various third-party platforms that make it easy to share maps across platforms. So if you're a Teams organization and you share ArcGIS items through Teams, you actually get the ability to open up items in your Teams interface now. And we're seeing increasing number of initiatives. So these are, sort of focused initiatives on maybe specific plan elements that are being deployed and supported through Hub. And maybe the most currently relevant and modern approach here is the integration of even our AI assistants incorporated into these public-facing assets that are helping answer some questions that the planning commissions struggle to keep up with. Things that are well documented within the data, but they simply don't have the time to produce the data and share it with every member of the public that comes to ask simple questions. And so actually training these AI assistants on authoritative GIS data from planning commissions and helping them implement those across their organization. The goal here is to really share better data and project-specific information more frequently so that trust can be developed within the community and the stakeholders.
Beau, we have a couple questions in the chat.
Sure.
Scott Bale says, good modeling of local to county to multi-county regions. How would you extend this model from multi-county regions to state regions to multi-state regions to national regions to multinational regions to global regions? So I guess all the way through the
Sure.
pipeline there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think your question has some practical limits, I would say, in the sense that a lot of the regional planning agencies that we work with are, interested in information that is adjacent to them, but that has a boundary. So, of course, we can work with agencies to assemble, say, parcel data from all of the counties that are within the jurisdiction of the regional planning agency. And that establishes sort of a fundamental layer of decision-making units being at a parcel level. But that is purely within the bounds of the jurisdiction. And maybe there is an opportunity to establish sort of a distributed collaboration with other adjacent regions. That might be worth exploring, especially in Georgia, where of course you have sort of all of the regional commissions that are adjacent to one another. Is there a way to kind of easily share data between one another so that you all have sort of the most authoritative information for even the regions that are adjacent to your region? Then to a state, I think I haven't seen a lot of sort of statewide assemblies of that level of detail. Typically, the types of planning decisions that are being made at a state level are often policy based, and they're being made with different types of data and different formats of data sets. So a lot of times we're looking at things like raster suitability analysis. But it really depends. In Pennsylvania, for example, where the Department of Community and Economic Development has recently been charged with the responsibility of creating a statewide affordable housing action plan. So of course they're going to be looking at land use as an important variable for that plan. I think the answer to your question is it ultimately depends. There is at a national level, you might look into the international geodesign collaboration. This is something that is exploring kind of the geodesign approach. If you're your question leads me to believe that maybe you're kind of following along with Carl Steinetz's theory of the national to local to national type of approach to geodesign, and that is a problem set that we're working on in collaboration with him, but from a slightly more academic perspective, I don't have as much practical knowledge on that framework, and don't often see it in use. And how the 3D models are created, again, also depends. There are multiple approaches to generating 3D models of both your sort of as-is conditions as well as the proposed conditions. So in the case of the as-is conditions, we actually have a 3D base map solution that will take LiDAR and building footprints and extrude some pretty high fidelity 3D models to get you started with a pretty solid 3D base map for your region. Alternatively, if you're not looking to perform a significant amount of analysis against the 3D models, there is a 3D base map in ArcGIS in the Living Atlas that allows you to bring 3D content into your web scene freely and used for visualization purposes. And then alternatively, if you're looking at, say, a project, a proposed project, oftentimes what we're seeing is more and more planning commissions are starting to recommend a 3D project submission or an e-submission through which the developers will submit BIM models from their architects that will actually provide you with a very high fidelity 3D model that you can use to assess whether or not, for example, a proposed building fits within the envelope, the zoning envelope. So there's some different considerations there. I got a thumbs up from Timothy. I don't know if I satisfied Scott. I'm sorry, Scott, but hopefully at least gave you some perspective. Mike Franks, thinking back to the post on financial dynamics and how impactful the cyclical economic downturn is there a way to visually depict economic factors such as average local business income, business productivity output, and thinking big picture, how it affects cost of living? What information can and can't you get as a planner? How are these business factors considered and modeled in urban planning if the goal is socioeconomic success for current and future residents? This is a really good question, and I think I honestly think what you're getting at is a bit of a holy grail kind of visualization. I don't think we've found a customer that is doing this quite yet, because I think the variables that you're describing are still somewhat abstract, and ultimately the way of breaking them down and or further abstracting them are methodologies that are still kind of going through peer review. And so, we work with the dynamics that we can work with. So how fast is a region growing? This is information that's readily accessible from the census, and to the degree that you can assemble multiple census data sets and analyze the rates of growth over time, you can do that down to like an individual block group level for an entire region pretty easily. And then on the business side, one of the things that is frequently looked at is how many businesses are opening and closing. It's looking at rates of replacement, whether it's people or it's businesses. You want to have more businesses opening you want to have more people in your region than people that are aging out, which is a very nice way of saying passing away. And then and leaving, migrating away. as well as businesses. You want to have more businesses opening than businesses that are closing. These are sort of simple high-level metrics that can be tracked. On the business front, there's various sources for that type of information that we've seen. One is from the local communities, can we get access to the number of new business applications or new business permits that have been established within the jurisdictions, to get a sense for the frequency with which they're cropping up. Alternatively, there are other third-party data providers that are out there that are tracking this type of information. One that comes to mind is SafeGraph, who has business related data that will kind of give you a sense for the number of places that have a community value. And then when it comes to modeling the actual sort of multiple factors that they provide to the community in terms of tax base or productivity and output, things of that nature. I think there's an exercise to be done there in the within the context of some decisions that the Planning Commission might be looking to make, that would be, you know, kind of looking at the decision-making process and reflecting the values that we're looking to establish as attributes of these features within the region, and sort of working through a modeling workflow. So that's going to be different depending on what types of variables or decision-making factors the planners are looking for. But it's certainly like a model builder or workflow manager kind of process that you're describing. Something that we'd be interested in sort of further diving into, and maybe a one-on-one conversation even. Mike, I'm not sure how helpful that was, but hopefully it's at least given you a little bit of something to chew on. Happy to follow up on that though. Okay, all right, I got oh, Jay. Do you have any insights on working within a region where some areas are rich in spatial data and while others lack spatial data, and how to bridge the gap to provide equitable service to all within the region? Yeah, this is a really challenging one. I think what we've seen is, and this what you're describing, I think describes most regions. There are unfortunately winners and losers in most regions. There are some regions where the disparity between the two is not as wide as others, but most regions that we work with have this problem, and it really, I think, depends on the mission and the mandate of the commission. I'll just give you an example. In Southern California, there is what's known as SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments. It is massive, 190 plus jurisdictions that span from the Southern California border with Nevada all the way to just south of Santa Barbara and all the way south to San Diego, and it covers very wealthy coastal communities to very underserviced communities in the high deserts and beyond. They're one of our customers that have kind of embarked on this regional data platform initiative and developing some of these tools. And they funded the project primarily through some state dollars that were coming down to support updates to plans, as well as member agency dues. So, and the justification for using the member agency dues to develop the platform to support the entire region is that, you know, a rising tide raises all boats, so to speak. So if the regional planning agency has better data, they can help make better plans that manage the negative externalities of growth within the region and help all of the communities sort of take on the costs of growth and make sure that it doesn't, you know, potentially cause negative impacts anywhere. And so they use the kind of carrot of better technical services to support the wealthy communities as a you know reason for justifying the investment that they would be making to support their sort of neighboring communities that maybe aren't as privileged. So I don't know. I'm actually not sure how the regional planning commissions are structured in Georgia to the degree that they may or may not be funded through any kind of member agency dues, in which case you may not have as much of a case to make on that front. It may be more looking for state funds or federal funds to justify the development of the data. But at the end of the day, you can't do good planning without good data. And so I think that's the fundamental argument is that, yes, there may be areas that don't have good spatial data, but it needs to be developed, because if it's not, then you can't support those communities in their growth. And of course, if they don't have the support and can't continue to grow, then unfortunately, there's no way out of the economic decline. So maybe that's something to talk about individually, Jay, just to see kind of what your situation is and how you see it. I'd be really interested in that. All right, I've got some thank yous for the responses. I know they're of varying levels of assistance. I can't hardly prepare for an audience as wide as you all to be super specific, but hopefully I'm at least hitting some targets and giving you some ideas. Cool. All right. Not seeing any other questions filtering into the chat at this point, so I feel like it's probably safe to move on, and I do want to be conscious of time. I know we're kind of coming up on the top of the hour, so I want to switch over to the approach to implementation. So in this section, I really just want to talk a little bit about how we think about delivering some of those components that we were just talking about, the data platform and the tools and the community engagement sort of front end. I hope it's not too generic or too fun, sort of GIS 101 for you. But I do want to start with just some basics. So, the story of using ArcGIS within a regional planning agency is in a lot of ways the story of ArcGIS. It is a geographic information system that can be, deployed in the cloud or on your infrastructure. And it comes with a collection of apps that are frameworks for plugging data in and getting started with configuration of applications without any need for custom development. The apps are supported by Esri's technical support, and so you get the benefit of the long-term support of the technology, updates and enhancements that are made, and things of that nature. So with that in mind, when we think about the implementation of the regional planning systems, we like to try and focus on leveraging as much of the ArcGIS platform technology as we can to start. It's not to say that we don't embark on development of custom applications, especially for very specific use cases. But we try to deliver as much value through the supported off-the-shelf technology as we can before we make decisions about that custom development. Some of the sort of core components that are being sort of stacked on top of your core ArcGIS infrastructure, whether it's online or it's enterprise. Of course, and probably for many of you in the audience, because you're more of a geospatial audience, you're also probably working in desktop on Pro very frequently. So you're sort of the people that make the magic happen, actually kind of curating all of the data sets and publishing the information for people to reuse. And where your planners are frequently reusing it is in these sort of system components. In the regional data platform, we're thinking about ArcGIS Hub and how you can promote the most authoritative data to the public through open data initiatives, promote other initiatives that are related to specific plan elements like a hazards mitigation plan, for example. You can have an entire section of your hub dedicated to your hazard mitigation plan and or other things of that nature. And depending on the type of hub that we help set up, oftentimes we're also interested in understanding how people are engaging with those different initiatives. So we can also set up ways to measure the engagement with them. That's just all off the shelf feature benefits of ArcGIS Hub. Then, of course, we use a wide variety of ArcGIS applications. One application to point you all to that is wildly underrated, maybe because it's so simple that it's almost hard to believe that people find value in it, is the Atlas Instant app. So if you're not familiar with instant apps, look them up. They're a relatively new innovation. They're very simple frameworks that are basically plug data in and make easy to share maps across the organization in a web app. And the Atlas, something that we're seeing with regional planning agencies, is this desire to have what they're calling a regional atlas. And this is where they're envisioning their existing conditions data living. So anytime that we begin on a plan update, we want to turn to our regional atlas to find where is our green print? What are the natural resources that are sort of no-go zones for development? Where are priority development areas? How does the transportation network overlay with our priority development areas? Does it give us insights into where we might want to further reinforce development, and also how does it relate to where population is expected to grow over the next several years, and maybe how does it relate to where building stock is aging, and we need to think about how the community is going to require additional housing units in order to accommodate that growth. These are all sort of existing conditions information that are the core data sets that are sort of hydrating the regional data platform. And they're being accessed. If you're not a GIS person and you're just a planner or a stakeholder, you don't really want to get access to the feature service or the REST service. You want to and bring it down into your desktop and start doing analysis. You just want to have a visual, almost like the atlas that's in the back of, well, used to be in the back of all of our cars. And when you're on your road trip, you open it up and say, oh, this is what's here. This is what's there. This is how we get from place to place. It's now a web-based atlas that has these sort of fundamental layers that are accessible to all of the stakeholders. So that's an ArcGIS instant app that I highly recommend looking into. Seeing a lot of regional atlas development. Simple, no-code app. We're also using these frameworks to build various analytical tools for suitability analysis and scenario management. And those exist in things like Experience Builder. So if you're getting familiar with Experience Builder, there are some suitability tools. There are suitability widgets that you can incorporate into your Experience Builders. Highly recommend getting familiar with those. They're a little bit different than the suitability modeling in Pro. So if you're like a suitability expert in Pro, it's worth starting to kind of familiarize yourself with those suitability widgets because they're just a little bit different. That's something that's we're actually working on with product, which is to try and coordinate the handoff between the two so that there's a little bit better technical alignment between the implementation of those two. ArcGIS Urban, so this is sort of our 3D scenario modeling tool set. It's really great for your local communities to be able to visualize and share their development pipeline. And so it's it is a 3D tool, does require that sort of base map, that 3D base map, whether it's just the base 3D base map from the Living Atlas, or if you've actually generated higher fidelity 3D models of your city or of the region, then you can use those. That's a great tool set for kind of executing a full cycle, a full life cycle planning process from assessing those existing conditions to evaluating suitability to modeling the actual scenarios and tracking the potential impacts. Highly recommend looking into that. And one of the things we're seeing on that front is more regions are actually paying to support the implementation of that tool set for their local communities, because what they're hoping to drive towards is a broader sort of connected 3D model of the entire region, where you can kind of track in 3D the entire development pipeline across the region. Right now, it's community driven, and that's really where the 3D technology is, ArcGIS. When you get to a regional scale, there's not as much value in using 3D, at least from a building development scenario perspective. There's probably landscape level values that we could get into, but urban being kind of a planning development specific tool, it's really focused on the communities. Then of course, you all probably don't need to hear this, but story maps are where all of the context is being communicated. So if you have a regional atlas, you have a lot of information that's sort of representing all of the existing information about the region. Where do they go to learn about why the green print is important and what the metrics mean? They go to story maps to actually understand that, because you can kind of pair your content with the narrative so that people have that sort of qualitative understanding of the information that's being shared. So these are just 3 quick picks I wanted to share. I don't know if you noticed, but most of the things I've been trying to share are all in 3s. I hope it's easier to remember that way. Although I think Tyler's recording this, so maybe it's not all that important. Should have thought of that ahead of time. Great. How am I doing on time, Tyler?
I mean, we technically have till 2, but folks need to drop off. We understand. So yeah, feel free to go as long as you want, as long as people are willing to stay and listen.
Cool. I only got a few more, so I'll try and get through them rather quickly.
Yeah. Bo, do you have any examples? Maybe not right now, but we can um, send out via Geospatial email blast that we can share with the folks. Like examples of like
Example.
the Atlas application, the Instant app.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Yep. Yeah, I debated whether or not I'd go into like deep demonstrations or not, but I would be glad to follow up with some demonstrations if anyone wants kind of a deeper dive into some of the examples I'm talking about too. But I'll send some links to Tyler just for him to check out and share with you all.
Thanks, Bo.
Okay, so this is sort of the technical approach. We do have a sort of collection of sort of services. I mentioned I'm in professional services. I'm technically a billable resource. I've been granted the hour to speak with you all, but we do have some services that can be helpful in some of these stages. So we get engaged on things like data strategies and contribute from a technical perspective of how to leverage the platform to deliver a data strategy. We get engaged in adoption of planning systems and helping actually build tools for users. So from kind of the full life cycle of planning, design to implementation and management, we can provide support to enable the success of the technology. The sort of my specialty and where I focus on engagements is through design workshops. So I actually host GIS design workshops for regional planning agencies. This typically is kind of like a strategic engagement to help get a sense for what the needs are and how the technology can be kind of like morphed or adapted to better meet those needs. So we have a sort of survey that we create to survey your stakeholders within your organization in terms of what they're looking for from the technology or what could be done to better meet their needs. We do a discovery workshop where we actually flesh out into those individual personas that we've surveyed, and we start to actually map out what workflows they're describing and brainstorm better approaches to meeting their needs. We host breakout sessions with individual user groups to help kind of filter out the noise in some of the survey feedback and stuff like that. And then what we typically do is we'll actually document all of that information throughout the entire process and turn that into a findings and recommendations report. Sometimes that even includes some sort of initial roadmap prototypes that help get started with those recommendations in short order. So this is something to keep in mind if you're interested in kind of exploring any of these topics in deeper detail. We have a quick little get started GIS design workshop. Otherwise, and probably prior to that, we would want to just have a conversation with you, meet you and your team, understand existing systems, challenges, workflows, understand what kind of data and use cases you might be looking to home in on. And then we typically turn that into kind of a broader needs assessment report that will help share what our perspective on your particular challenges look like and make sure that we understand what you really need, and then use that as kind of a set of recommendations for next steps. So this is sort of our easy 3-step process to getting started down the road of developing, advancing, maturing your regional planning systems. if any of that is interesting to you, or any of the topics that we've kind of talked about in more general terms are interesting to you enough to follow up on, my email's on the screen here. I'd be glad to have a follow-up conversation with any of you all, learn more about your policy, learn more about what planning looks like in your geography, learn all the ways that I am totally wrong about everything I've mentioned here today. And yeah, I just want to give a big thank you again to Tyler and you all for inviting me to join. I hope it's been useful, informative, and yeah, looking forward to chatting with any of you all. If you'll be at user conference, again, shoot me an email. I'll be out in San Diego for the week of Esri's user conference. Would be glad to chat then. Yeah, all right. How's that, Tyler?
Thanks, Beau. That was great. Yeah. And yeah, if you send me a couple examples, I can share it out with probably from uh, Georgia Geospatial's LinkedIn page, and then maybe from Ebo Blast too, just to have some follow-up resources. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining today. Thanks for your time. As I said earlier, the next session in June is going to be a hybrid in-person virtual in Athens at the Northeast chapter for GGA. And then in July, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, we're actually going to have Tim Johnson, the former GIO from the state of North Carolina, talking about his efforts to bring together GIS data from across the state to bring up GIS to what it is today in North Carolina. So he's got a great story to tell. So I'm really looking forward to that one in July. But if there's any last questions, feel free to unmute or put in the chat now. And if not, I hope everybody has a great rest of their Tuesday and a good 3-day weekend.
Thanks, Tyler.
All right. Thanks, Beau. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.